don't necessarily move up. So we're talking a little bit about a glass ceiling issue. You don't necessarily move up into the next rank just because of years of service. And we can see that women either stay at lower levels in terms of their job status, or they basically leave the university. So one or two things is happening here. We don't have women moving up into higher rank positions among faculty. And if we were to look at the number of women in the faculty leadership positions, so here I'm talking about the deans. We have 2 of the 16 deans currently associated with OU. So these are the deans of colleges and the deans of the branch campuses. 2 of the 16 deans are women. So you see the trend that we have here of declining women with rank continuing to the leadership level. So you have about 12% of the academic leadership being represented by women. Interestingly, if we compare this data to national statistics, they somewhat mirror but exacerbate national statistics. So we have all tenure track faculty. Nationally, women make up a lower percentage of tenure track faculty at other universities, but at a rate of around 45% women to 55% men. So OU's track record in this regard is not great. Another point to make is that I mentioned previously that among new hires, so this would be into the assistant professor or associate professor level, new hires, we have approximately 30% within the last 2 years of the new hires have been women. And this is an interesting statistic when we consider the fact that 50%, full half of the people that are receiving PhDs across the US are women. So certainly this doesn't reflect the supply in terms of people receiving PhDs as a whole. One of the issues, and I'll talk a little bit about these more as I go on, but one of the issues that studies done at the national level have linked to this attrition that we see, or this decline in the number of women as they move up in rank through the faculty positions, is attrition based on issues surrounding childcare or parental leave. And so this is one of the reasons that the Women's Commission decided to look specifically at this issue of childcare and parental leave. Before I talk about that though, I want to make a few comments about the salaries that we can see in each of these categories. So across all levels of faculty rank, on average, men's salaries are higher than women's, and this is variable across colleges. So at the full professor level, we see the largest salary wage gap, gender wage gap, which is $8,800, and at the assistant professor level, this wage gap continues to exist, although at a lower level. To give you some sense of the impact of this over, I don't think anyone in here would say, oh, $2,000, that's not much, why would you worry about that? But to give you a sense of the implications of this over a lifetime's earnings, this is a somewhat complicated graph, and I'll try to explain it the best I can. If you look at 2 employees, a male employee and a female employee, who start at approximately $5,000 difference in starting salary, there's a difference there in their first year salary of $5,000. Assuming that there's a 3% across the board sort of increase in pay, we see their 30th year salary, so what the woman is actually earning after 30 years. I'm trying to get that cursor without doing what I did previously. That the woman's salary is now $11,700 less than her male counterpart's salary. If we consider career earnings, though, not just annual earnings, but over the lifetime of the career, this means that the woman would have earned $237,000 less than her male counterpart. One interesting thing about this, though, is that we don't just earn money, we earn money and we have potential to invest it. So if we think about the investment potential here, we can say that if the male employee makes a one-time investment of that extra $5,000, so just takes that $5,000 one time and invests it with the assumptions that I have up here on the board. So 5% annual growth rate, compounded interest over 29 years, that after 29 years, this employee will have an additional $20,000. If the male employee is able to invest this additional $5,000 every year, we're talking about a potential lifetime's earning through investment of $33,000. So the career differential here is $420,000, which is pretty significant, again, when we're thinking about things like ability to provide for households, especially in single-parent families, retirement, etc. If we look at, again, that was data that was focused specifically on faculty and tenure-track faculty, but if we look at the administration, we can say that the top 101 administrators in the university, 31 are women and 70 are men. So we see the same percentage in terms of women participating in jobs at this level, so about 30% of the top 101 administrators. And we again see the gender wage gap here, so that women are earning on average $30,000 less than their male counterparts in administration. Now this is where I have to say that what I just presented was part of the Women's Commission report, and this is not part of the Women's Commission report, so this is sort of my takeaway message here. Interestingly, again, we see that OU doesn't compare favorably to national statistics in this regard. And an interesting study just came out last year in the journal Industrial and Labor Relations Review Journal, and this is by May, Morehouse, and Bossard, and please email me if you'd like the citation. And this suggests that at universities that are unionized, so these three researchers found that at unionized universities, women fare better both in terms of representation across all faculty levels and at higher ranks, as well as in terms of salary. So one of the author's first conclusions was that unions improve faculty life for both men and women, but women benefit from them even more. Part of this is that part of the study showed that universities with a female president or chancellor have higher proportions of assistants and associate professors as well. So we can say that the presence of a union not only affects women's ability to move up in rank and to achieve salaries that are similar to men's, but the presence of women in upper level administration also seems to have a relationship with the number of women that either apply or are retained. So this is an issue of recruitment. Maybe more women would apply to a university with women in upper level administration, or an issue of retention. Maybe these types of universities where women are in upper level administration have more women-friendly or family-friendly policies. So one of the conclusions of this study, and I would say an interesting conclusion that you could draw based on the Women's Commission data in comparison to other universities, is that if you're interested in advancing gender equity, then unionization would be a way to go. And also, unions might want to pass on these messages to potential members as a way to recruit people into active union participation. I think that looking at these aggregate data is somewhat complicated, because you can say, oh, there are a lot of reasons, of course, that women are paid less than men. And I was actually at a meeting just this week with one of the academic deans and the provost and the rest of the Women's Commission. And one of the strong sentiments that came out of the meeting was much of this has to do with the way that our society is structured, outside of anything having to do with the institution. So we can say that, of course, there are more women working in lower paid fields. So English, for example, the professors in English are not making as much as professors in engineering, and there are more women in English than engineering. So this is occupational sex segregation, which explains much of the differentials that we see here. But interestingly, I think that if you look at government DOA reports that look at this issue of gender wage gap, occupational sex segregation does not explain everything. So that even within the same disciplines, even at the same levels, women are being paid less than men. So what are some other ways of explaining this? Obviously, the institution as a whole, well, you could argue this, but the institution has said there's nothing we can do about occupational sex segregation. We could say that there are other things, though, that maybe OU could do something about in order to both retain and retain women, advance women through the career pipeline so that they end up at a higher level administrative positions, and to achieve a greater level of pay equity. Some of the other differences, if you think about when women are hired compared to men, studies have shown that women have different negotiation strategies in terms of negotiating for pay that result in them having lower pays. So this is a message to all of you. And I, of course, when I was hired, the same year as my husband, who was hired at like $10,000 more than me, we both have the same degree.
Jesus Christ.
I didn't negotiate at all. I was like, "You're giving me a job, that's really super, thank you." So, women, this is something that you can think about, but I think it's also something that the university can be aware of as they're bringing female faculty in and, and negotiating with salaries. The studies also, a recent study that was published in the Journal of Feminist Economics just showed that women tend to report higher rates of service. And annually, the faculty here are reviewed for merit. Most of our pay increases come from merit review. And we are considered more meritorious if we publish a lot. If we're good in the classroom, we're sort of meritorious. If we do a lot of service, I don't know. One of the people who might be reviewing me is sitting in the room. I don't know that that's necessarily taken as much into account in terms of our merit. 20%, right? So that's only 20% of what we do. The other two things, there's 40, but there's certainly a gender difference in the amount of service that women do as professors and that men do. So these are things that they might not be getting raises for, but it is work that they're doing. Certainly, again, across occupations outside of just the university as well, we can see that women